grammar and comprehension and understanding. There's somebody else who decides how big a story that turned out to be and where to present it in a telecast or a broadcast or on a newspaper page or in a magazine. So there are different jobs, and it's done by different people. If it were all done by the same person, the final product would be very different, because it's almost impossible to play those same roles right on top of one another. You need time. So my songs are written over a very long period of time, because as a guy who only writes as a solo writer and as a solo performer, I've got to make sure that I haven't gotten caught up in the giddiness of writing a song. I've got to let, Dom the editor have a shot at it, and, Dom the listener, and all sorts of different people, all named Dom, who all look like me. But we all have different jobs to do, because there's no co-writers and no collaborators. I don't work for a professional songwriting thing or anything like that. So it's a long and lengthy and drawn out and compartmentalized process when you're all by your lonesome doing it.
Man, if there's one person that would benefit from cloning right now, you would do well.
Perhaps me.
And there you go. But you wouldn't have to tell anybody, because, then it would be weird. It would be like the Dom band, and you don't,
Yes.
that'd be a little kind of really strange. It would make for really unique pictures anyway.
Yes.
So now, do you have one guitar or many guitars?
I am a one guitar person for performing. I own an Ovation acoustic electric guitar. It's their Celebrity series. It's an acoustic, fully functioning acoustic guitar, but it has electronics built into it, so you can plug directly into a sound system. So when I'm sitting at home working on a song, or just strumming away having fun, I can hear it as you would any acoustic guitar. But when I get out to play publicly, I can plug it directly into a soundboard or a PA system, a mixing board.
Direct in, yeah.
Have that direct feed come right through the speakers with me. It's a very shallow guitar, meaning that if from where the strings are to the back of the body is about as wide as a baseball, which for an acoustic guitar is pretty thin.
Pretty thin. The Ovations are rounded backs.
Yeah, it's also made out of, the soundboard is made out of wood, and the fretboard is made out of wood. But the rest of the guitar body is made out of a composite material, and it is rounded. It's Ovation guitars were created by a man, I'm going to mispronounce his last name. It's Kaman, Charlie Kaman, or some people have pronounced it Kaman. He was in the aeronautics industry, making military helicopters, and used his knowledge of aerodynamics and transformed that to acoustics. Yeah, how different shapes and different angles project and carry sound. And so it's kind of a parabolic, if you want to go back to some of your geometry from high school. It's sort of a parabolic roundness to the back of the guitar body.
I never knew that. That's such an interesting idea, because, it is related. Somebody would say, what does aerodynamics have to do with music? But, it is sound. It's the science of sound. Sound is produced by the vibration of air.
Yeah, it's vibration and waves and direction of sound and everything like that. Yeah, and it really changed music, not only in the sense that people thought about it as, physics now, rather than simply as art and music, but as a science of constructing the musical instrument. But I believe the Ovation line was the first to introduce acoustic electric guitars, where it would be an acoustic guitar, but they would have small microphones built inside them, so that you could plug them directly into sound systems on stage, or for any other purpose, like maybe to get a direct recording of the guitar. It's kind of a melding of art and science, kind of what I do as a performer, mathematically, but at the same time I realize that there's a bit of craftsmanship and a bit of artiness to music.
Yeah, it's funny, I bought my professional acoustic. I have a couple of them, and many of them never leave the house. But the one that I do use professionally does plug in just like yours. And I remember I bought it for that reason, the same reasons, just the simplicity of let's plug in. I don't need an extra microphone, and this thing will go direct in. You know, and you get such a crisp sound. And I brought it, the first time I brought it into a studio, I told the guy, hey, this plugs in, and it was like, he really, not in a mean way, but he really just didn't care. He just had his method, and he just crossed two mics right in front of the sound hole and went the old-fashioned way, and it still sounded phenomenal. So
that's how I did it too, yeah. In a studio, you have a very controlled setting. You can eliminate all the other sound. You can do an extensive setup to make sure that you're getting the perfect sound through your microphones, and your microphones are positioned well. And you can do a little test and play it back and say, okay, we've set up everything perfectly. We have a controlled environment. Go ahead and play. You know, being in a tavern isn't like that. So
no.
You know, yeah, for my recordings are done by miking the guitar, you know, just like yours. But yeah, when I'm up on stage, it is easier to be able to just plug the doggone thing in.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it would be a nightmare, really, to have to sit there and do the same mic tests and work that you do in the studio live. I mean, you'd never get set up.
Especially if you're one person. When I go out and perform, I'm one person, and I'm typically my own sound guy.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to have to carry the extra mics. I wouldn't want to have to fiddle around with them. I would never be able to get them really perfect anyway.
Yeah.
Again, unless, like you were mentioning before, I had a bunch of clones running around that could set up the mic and stand in the back of the room and make sure that there were no sound problems from that.
Hey, Dom, how do I sound? You're a little loud, Dom. Okay, Dom, bring it down. Hey, Dom, the bass is too much. Okay, Dom. The Doms. When you're doing it direct live at a gig, you do have trial and error. You do kind of change the EQ a little bit. Maybe you change the volume a little bit. Maybe the reverb a little bit, because the room is different than everything you just played the weekend before. But essentially, those are a couple of little turns, and you get yourself from A to B fairly efficiently, and you're there. Well, we have that obstacle, too, that you often get to the venue hopefully early. I mean, some of the musicians out there are often traditionally very late, but, you know, we get there hopefully early, and if you're there early and people have not started to come in yet and you're doing your sound check, the sound is suddenly different the minute the place gets full.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now you're almost doing another sound check. Everybody has their trademarks, and I think the one thing that you really have as your trademark, whether it was intentional or not, is you have the trademark bucket hat. And anybody that knows Dom, we just think Dom with the hat. Now, how did that hat come about?
That first time that I went out to perform at an open mic, you know, that spot, the Grape Street Pub, I was kind of wearing the hat when I walked in. You know, there were places for people to hang up their jackets and things, but, you know, and it being the first week of March, it's still technically winter, so people were wearing coats, and you could basically hang up a coat, and if you didn't leave anything in the pockets, it is relatively safe that your jacket could hang on a hook, and you keep an eye on it. And I was like, well, yeah, I really don't want to lose the hat. So I decided, I'm not taking this off. You know,
it stayed on the whole time.
I kept it on my head. So there it was. I was on stage wearing, you know, this bucket hat. You know, people recognized me with it, and I said, well, I'll keep wearing it.
There you go.
So the hat is made.
So now you're not just the guy who wrote just 3 little letters on the list. You're now, you know, Dom with the hat, and there it is. Okay, now my favorite thing to talk about are outrageous stories. I have to hear some outrageous Dom stories, because we've all had them. I've had crazy gigs. I had Christine Vrablik was on the show a few weeks ago, and she was telling us about a really awesome clumsy moment on stage. It was really funny last week with Jeff Horton on the show, and Jeff was telling us about a huge scary bouncer at a club that he had been playing, and it turned out that the big scary bouncer was not quite as scary as he had anticipated, but you guys have to check out those shows to really hear the stories. But Dom, you have to tell us some of your stories, because I know you've had a few really awesome experiences.
Oh, I've got a few funny things that have happened. I was playing down at a place that had outdoor speakers. That they had a beautiful hardwired sound system inside the facility, and they had some speakers outside of their store so that, you know, people passing by on the sidewalks